Halls of Montezuma, to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country.
Hello and welcome to today's Battle Mech review. Today we're going to be looking at one of those mechs that people don't think about often enough, with the Iron Cheetah. This is basically the Hoodless dire wolf that you will be talking about every once in a while if you're in the shop, someone bringing one of those in and you're just very confused about what it is. Well, basically, the Iron Cheetah was the last big mech that the Smoke Jaguars built, and it hasn't been in massive production at the time, and the only time it's actually been in a decent amount of production was under the Republic of the Sphere through Clan Diamond Shark / Sea Fox. So it is not a common thing, but it is one that is surprisingly good and probably would have had a bigger impact if it had stuck around. We don't have that many big 100-ton Omni-Mechs out there. This falls into that particular category, and it also falls in a fast assault category, which is not one that is as often talked about as we should. It is a rather scary thing, so let's get into it. The first contact of the Iron Cheetah with the Inner Sphere forces, and with anybody to be honest there, was during the good old days of the Second Star League, as the Smoke Jaguars were getting destroyed and annihilated from every single side. Let's be honest, the rest of the clans that didn't mind seeing the Smoke Jaguars getting smoked because, well, they had caused quite a few different issues during the invasion, and even though they had been great warriors, well, they had been going downhill from that point. There was rumors floating around of a Gojira or Kaiju Omni-Mech that was causing trouble, and basically it was just things that popped up, generally caused a whole lot of damage and got blown up, or sometimes got captured and people wondered why that particular dire wolf was looking a little bit weird. It was a new 100-tonner Omni-Mech, and the other clans didn't have time to look at it and try to steal it either. It basically showed up during the Operation Bulldog / Serpent period, got used and destroyed, and, well, the handful of machines that were reported and built, well, only very few of those were captured and repaired. At that point in history, well, the Jaguars were basically running on fumes. As of about 3054, their main facilities and their main factories were not being fed the materials that they needed to build new mechs and new machines, or at least not in the numbers that they needed. Their holdings in clan space were running dry. Well, there were still resources on quite a few of the worlds. It's just that they weren't being mined or exploited, and they didn't have the manpower to go and expand those particular holdings. And they had not gotten access to as many resources as some of the other clans during their little incursion in the Inner Sphere space, especially since a lot of the locals were quite mad at them. There were revolts, insurrections all the time, and even with brutal repression, it didn't quite fix the problem. Might be because a lot of the Curetans that they were imposing those brutal repressions on, well, were already used to it. This led to things like the Protomechs being introduced and created as well, because they needed machines and they didn't have the resources for them. But even that had been slowing down, and new weapons development had been going at a crawl space compared to what all the other clans and most of the Inner Sphere at the times was doing. And that's probably the problem with the Iron Cheetah, or at least the biggest problem with it. I think it's a great mech overall, and it is an upgrade to the Dire Wolf in some ways. But it has the same kind of problem as the Ebon Jaguar and quite a few other Omni-Mechs of that era. You have a massive XL engine, you've got double heat sinks, you've got endo steel, you've got ferrofibrous armor, all the big kit that you know how to build, but whenever you start building it, you start noticing that, well, it costs a lot of money, costs a lot of resources, or take a whole lot of time. Yes, a single Iron Cheetah is probably worth a lance of Inner Sphere mechs, at least in the anything lower than heavy or heavy and lower. Between assault mechs, I'd probably trade an Iron Cheetah for 2 or 3 Inner Sphere battle mechs. Well, the general ones that you'd have at that era, at least. But really, losing a single Iron Cheetah cost the Jaguars far more than what the opponents were ready to lose taking one down. I mean, if I send a company of light mechs to blow up an Iron Cheetah, I'm going to have lost, well, quite a few light mechs, but I'm going to be able to replace those things. Losing that Iron Cheetah, you will not be able to replace because you just don't have the resources for it. Over time, this really became the main problem the Jaguars would face, but not just with the Iron Cheetah, with every single mech that they put on the field. With the destruction of Clan Smoke Jaguar, the Iron Cheetah's production ended, and the facilities that built them were basically shut down. It took quite a while, after the Jihad actually, for Clan Diamond Shark to get the plans, probably by going to the location and just getting them from there, or maybe it was through various deals that they had with the Jaguars at the time, or it might be through, well, more nefarious means. But they got the plans for the Iron Cheetah, and, well, the Republic of the Sphere decided that they had exclusive rights to them. They actually paid quite a bit of money to the Diamond Sharks in order to do that. With the collapse of the Republic of the Sphere, though, the Sea Fox, what used to be the Diamond Shark, decided to try to find new buyers, and the Great Houses were dumping a lot of cash in order to get them. But really, the two main buyers were Clan Snow Raven and Clan Wolf, which were interested in using them in their improved and more modern Tomans. So the Iron Cheetah pushes the limit of the third generation Omnimechs. Basically, this is probably as advanced as fancy as you can get before you get to that fourth generation, which it basically dialed things back a little bit. It's a little bit odd there. The engine is a massive model SF3 400XL engine, which gives you a top speed of 64 kilometers per hour, which is quite threatening on a 100-ton mech. You're not going to be using it for physical attacks all that much, but I mean, you could. Big kicks from that thing would be pretty threatening, but it also means that you're able to carry battle armors and put them where you need to fairly easily. It also lets the engine hold 16 double heat sinks, which is quite good and will be needed in many configurations. The skeleton is made of the fancy endo steel, and you've got 16 tons of ferrofibrous plates, which is also quite massive. This is one of the toughest, fastest assault mech out there. And it still manages to have 13.5 tons of pod space for all the remaining equipment, which is less than the full Cowl Dire Wolf, but it's still plenty enough to cause all sorts of issue, especially since this is clan weaponry, which is generally a little bit smaller. To feature this, well, the prime configuration of the Iron Cheetah takes advantage of all the firepower and range clan weapons can give you. On one side, you've got an arm packing a Gauss rifle fed by 2 tons of ammo, which is quite reasonable, backed up by a pair of medium pulse lasers. It gives you decent enough range and very good accuracy there. On the other side, you got a pair of ERPPCs and a 15 rack of Artemis guided LRM, again with 2 tons of reload. That gives you 3 potential head capping weapon, that gives you an extensive amount of range, and not that much of a minimum range here. Only the Gauss rifle will have some problems if someone gets really close by. On top of all of this, you get a nice little anti-missile system, which is sometimes rear-facing, or you also have an ER small laser, which is usually rear-facing. What I've seen happen actually is that you've got 2 AMS being installed, one forwards, one backwards, with the ER small laser being taken off. It really depends on the configuration. This is prime, but with the number of those things that actually were around, it might not have been that common. Alpha configuration, on the other hand, is a short-range monster that exists to delete armor and infantry, which was a pretty big threat during the Operation Bulldog and Serpent for the Smoke Jaguars. Your main weapon is an Ultra 20 class autocannon fed by a limited 2 tons of reloads, but hopefully that will be enough. Supporting this is a pair of large pulse laser in the opposite arm, giving you very good accuracy and range, which is often needed in these situations. And you have a tube of 6 tubes of SRM actually on each side torso, allowing you to blow up tanks if they come close by. Finally, you've got 6 machine guns spread all over the body there, just to delete whatever infantry was around. You have an active probe on there as well to find targets that are hidden, which is important when dealing with armor. Once again, you don't want to walk in and have a Hetzer just show up right next to you and blow your leg off. So yeah, it is meant to do that with 2 extra double heat sinks as well in order to keep things decently cool. So overall, this is a very nasty and very imposing configuration and is a threat to quite a few different things. Bravo configuration, on the other hand, is an optimized killing machine, which kind of reminds me of the old Black Python from Clan's Steel Viper. It has a targeting computer to guide all of its lasers, and it's got quite a few of those. A large pulse laser and a trio of medium pulse laser in each arm, giving you, well, a whole lot of energy punch right there. You get 2 extra double I-Ching to kind of manage the eat of that, and it's kind of difficult there. While it also has a set of jump jets letting you vault 120 meters into the air, which is quite threatening there. You will be able to get where you need to go, and you'll be able to blow up what you need to blow up with all those lasers and targeting computer. You also have a little emotional support ER small laser in the nose. If you've lost both of your arms and it's your only weapon, you might want to just walk up to someone and start kicking at that point. Charlie configuration is meant to be an efficient sniper, but it also functions at shorter range because, well, those clan weapons just don't have minimum range on them. Your main weapons are a quartet of ER large lasers split between the arms, which will give you quite a bit of punch, and it's backed by 4 medium pulse laser, also 2 on each arm, meaning that, well, you're going to be able to shoot things up fairly well at every single range. To round things up a little bit there, you've got a pair of Streak 2 tubes of SRM on the arms as well, which is quite nice if you're fighting tanks or any other small little buggers out there. Quite a decent setup all in all. Your shoulder also mounts a 15 rack of LRM, allowing you to just do some extra long range fire support there, and you've got extra E-Sinks as well in order to keep things, well, I'm not going to say cooler, because, well, 4 ER large lasers is going to run you quite quickly. Delta configuration is quite multi-purpose here. I would say that it's really meant to do everything just a little bit, which is weird on an Omni mech, which are generally a little bit more specialized in the long run. At long range, you can take advantage of a shoulder-mounted Gauss rifle and a pair of ER large lasers in the left arm. So you do have some very good long-range potential there. At closer range, you also have an ER medium laser. There, it's still a large laser if you were in the inner sphere, and a 20 class LBX autocannon in order to exploit holes that you would have made in the armor with the prior weapons. You also have a rear-facing ER small laser to finish up the setup. This can be easily replaced with a light active probe, a forward-facing ER small laser, or just a few different little things there. Light active probes were quite popular with the Smoke Jaguars at the time. Lima configuration dates from the Republic of the Sphere control of the design, and it goes rather crazy. And for once, it goes crazy in the right direction, because a lot of time when you look at Republic of the Sphere machines, you start having TSEMP cannon and all those weird things there that are not quite as good as you would want. First, the engine is tied to a supercharger, which will give you a top speed of 86 kilometers per hour, which is rather massive on a 100-ton mech. The main weapon, though, is a Case 2 protected AG-40, which will give you a great punch against anything that's flying, and great punch in general. Of course, it's not like a Gauss rifle. It'll be pellets that's going to hit your targets and not just one big chunk of iron. But, I mean, 40 AG-40s are pretty darn scary. You also have a quartet of improved heavy medium lasers, also protected by a Case 2, which is quite nasty as well, because once you get hit by those things, you might regret the AG-40. Your rear is protected by a pair of medium pulse lasers that quite a few people just flip forward, while you also have a shoulder-mounted large pulse laser for a little bit more punch in that forward bracket. Finally, the entire targeting assembly is tied to a light active probe, which gives this thing a little bit more utility. It's pretty good overall here. One thing I would do is maybe move things around and armor the supercharger. Armored superchargers are very nice because, well, it's not really just the supercharger that's armored. It's basically reinforced, so if it does decide to just go, well, it'll damage itself and not damage your engine, which is a better thing than most of the time when a supercharger decides to go. As far as weapons, I think everything on there is pretty good. Of course, an AG-40 means that you're not going to have a whole lot of shots for it. Maybe an AG-30 would have been better. I mean, there's variations you could do on this team. To round things up, well, with an R configuration, that sounds good there, is a Romeo configuration that is an odd dog that started popping up on our radar mostly due to the Battle of Terra. We've seen those being used both by the Republic of the Sphere and the Clan Wolf. Basically, whatever Iron Cheetah the Republic was using, well, the Clan Wolf could easily repurpose with their own stuff, so it wasn't that bad. And, well, this particular setup has been showing up in the records we've got on this. It's basically a rebuild of that Alpha Wolf that the Clan Wolf has been using as well here, each arm packing a rotary AC5 and a coaxial medium pulse laser. Gives you a decent amount of punch at okay range. I mean, those Clan rotary AC5s are basically Ultra AC5s with the dial turned up all the way to 11, and medium pulse lasers are always a good little weapon. For increased protection, though, these things usually ran a laser anti-missile system in the center torso. You've got enough heat sinks to make it run without any issue, and the mobility is improved with a set of jump jets, because mobility was extremely important during the Battle of Terra. Finally, you also have a light active probe, which gives you some detection capabilities and cuts through some basic ECM ghost targets, so it can be useful in a variety of ways. Honestly, for a 100-tonner mech, the Iron Cheetah hasn't been exploited to its limits yet. There's quite a few configurations that I can think of and I can imagine you could do with it. Quite a few of them would actually use a supercharger. Wouldn't be that bad on a mech that size, and you've got the room for it, and it's easy enough to armor, like I said earlier. With more open sales of the design nowadays, since it's not restricted to, well, Clan Smoke Jaguar building like 5 of them, or the Republic of the Sphere, well, we've got upcoming configuration that might get popular over the year, and as soon as a new Omni-Mech really enters the market, well, we've got more things that can be interesting and moved towards. I mean, it's a good idea, and fast assaults are more and more popular nowadays, so who knows where the Iron Cheetah will really end up going. So I thank everybody for listening to me for so long. I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day, and I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.